Breaking news. Ajit Doval, who is the current National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of India, and there is a video that has come to the surface in which Mr. Ajit Kumar Doval claims to be training the Afghan forces in India, and the claims were that no force in the world can defeat the Afghanistani army. And as you can see on your screens, the video, and in which he is also speaking about how greatly the Indian forces have trained the Afghan forces, and he said it is impossible for the Taliban to overcome such a highly and sophisticatedly trained army. But as we saw on the 15th of August, how the Taliban took control of the entire country, and most of the Afghan army had surrendered to the Taliban. Now, as also we have receiving a report about a young Afghan soldier who had been trained at the Dehradun Indian Military Academy as well.
It does not happen overnight, but I don't believe them, as I have never believed in the Pakistanis. I don't believe them. But this is the question.
Now, as I was talking about the video that has been surfaced for our audience, we are going to play the video for you.
20 top Pakistani security officials with the rank of Lieutenant General and above in different places and others. Not one of them has subscribed to this view that this army will be able to hold back, irrespective of the fact what is their weapons, what is their training level, what are this thing. They say there is a mismatch between the officers level and the cadres, and once the ethnic loyalties come up, once there's the transition of power, and again this will get probably it. To create a national army is a time-consuming process. It does not happen overnight, but I don't believe them, as I have never believed in the Pakistanis. I don't believe them.
Now, to talk more on this, we have been joined by General Retired Amjad Shoaib. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Now, this video of Ajit Doval has surfaced, and in which he claims that the Indian forces had trained the Afghan forces greatly, and it just comes as an upset to the entire Indian nation and armed forces, sir.
Personally, I think he is an overrated person, and he has some false hair about himself. He is a man who can create problems, he can create mischief, he can be a source of terrorism, but he's not a man of peace, doesn't have that kind of farsightedness. So naturally, he perhaps has been thinking in his own way, and this is what he has done to Afghanistan. It is for the Afghan people to think about it. Do they need peace, or they want people like him who are experts in deception, experts in terrorism? He is the person who perhaps has led Afghanistan to this situation where perhaps their forces have collapsed, their entire system has collapsed at the moment. There is no government for the time being. And I just hope that ultimately Taliban and the other stakeholders, they'll be able to come up with some kind of consensus solution. If they don't do that, then naturally this turmoil will continue. Ajit Doval, I think right from the first day, right from the day one, this man, when he took charge, he never had the intention of bringing some peace to Afghanistan. For peace and tranquility, there was no need of training the forces or building up an army. There was a need to bring all the stakeholders on one table and try to create some kind of consensus, some kind of arrangement, agreement between them, where they could share the power. And even today, we are saying that this is the only solution, otherwise they'll keep on fighting against each other. He was the man who was responsible for preventing Ashraf Ghani from joining the peace process. They had been pumping arms into his armories and telling him not to negotiate with the Taliban. When the Taliban were prepared to negotiate the peace process or peace agreement with them, or power sharing agreement with them, these people, they asked them to adopt the path of war. And ultimately, you have seen Ashraf when he had to run away, his entire coterie, his entire clan is now at the run. And I don't know what will be their future. But India is responsible. Then we come to their training. They had trained more than 1,000 officers of the Afghan army. And all of them, as I think Joe Biden mentioned, that training is all right, but you cannot give some kind of intention or courage for a person to fight. So that was lacking. And then they had tribal loyalties, and because of the tribal loyalties, they were looking in different direction, most of them. The officers class was from the north, and the fighting soldier, foot soldiers, they were from south and east. Pashtun, from the Pashtun belt. So I think Taliban or Pashtun and most of the soldiers, they didn't want to fight against them. So these are the things which Pakistan or Pakistani officers had time and again pointed to them, because we were serious about peace in Afghanistan. And all along we have been saying that for peace in Pakistan, we need to have peace in Afghanistan too. So that was the issue there. I think not only Ajit Doval, he went wrong, but he also was able to misguide the entire international community, where they started pouring in money and also the weapons, and ultimately they were able to buy a few politicians from Afghan society and build up an army which was not capable of giving any fight.
Right. Also, Mr. Shoaib, also shed some light on this now. Mr. Doval made some claims about the Pakistan military's, discrediting the Pakistan military's understanding of Afghanistan, but they ended up being proven right in the end. How did this happen?
See, the point is understanding. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we have, people from the same ethnicity living in KPK, and many of them, they are holding key positions in our setup, particularly in the army also. We have about 40% Pakhtuns in our army, and there is better understanding because we live with each other. And not only within the army, but also, today you have a defense minister, he's a Pakhtun. You have a large number of KPK people and Pakhtuns working in civil services also and elsewhere. So when you live with each other, you know the mindset, you also know the traditions, and you also know the sources of the loyalties. So that way, I think our assessments were always correct. And Ajit Doval was just talking out of his hat. He perhaps didn't have that kind of experience, ground experience where he could have faced the realities.
Right. Also, Mr. Shoaib, tell us now, the Ghani government, India, was facilitating and in every way that extraordinary access in Afghanistan could have been made possible to an unusually high number of Indian operatives and intel personnel. But despite all that, why do you think the situational assessment was so wrong?
See, India had their own, I would say, their own interests and their own objectives which they wanted to achieve, and these objectives are purely against Pakistan. Even if they had known that this thing is not going to work, they would have made an effort to pitch up things against Pakistan, because that was their main objective. Afghanistan is a Muslim country. Do you think they will have any special love for these Muslims, and they are treating so badly their own Muslim population in India? People are being lynched on the roadsides in the name of cow raksha. These cow raksha, even a cow is more valuable than the human life. They can kill everybody, any Muslim. So that was there, that they had no special love for the Afghan Muslims, except that they wanted some kind of foothold there and play the devil's role within Pakistan. And for that, they need to pump in money in Ashraf Ghani's coffers and also in the pockets of other politicians, so that they start siding with them, and also try for buying the loyalties of the army by training them in their own institutions and also by training the intelligence people in their own institutions. So they did their bit and kept on feeding false information, false narratives through their own loyal intelligence officers to Ashraf Ghani and various other people, trying to build up a picture that for all their miseries and problems, it is Pakistan which is responsible for everything. So this is something which perhaps we could not really correct at that time or counter that narrative, due to which we had very serious problems in Afghanistan where people, ordinary people, they started thinking that Pakistan is not a friendly country. They have they are responsible for all the problems of Afghanistan, and it is India which is spending money also, and they are very sincere to Afghan common men, whereas they were not. And even today, I think Indians will continue doing some mischief. It has to be a bigger effort by Pakistan to clarify the things, to tell to the Afghan people that, look, this is the only way, this is the only possibility of bringing peace to Afghanistan, that you have a sort of unanimous solution, try to negotiate with each other. And this is what Pakistan has been trying. I mean, all along we have been saying that there are no favorites as far as Pakistan is concerned. Taliban are not our favorite, but we know that Taliban are a force. You can't really just remove them from the surface of earth and be happy about it. So they have to be taken into the entire game, and they have to sit down with the other stakeholders and work out a solution where they can live side by side and can work for the betterment of their people.
Right, Mr. Shoaib, lastly, we know India is no philanthropist nation, and its motives in Afghanistan is confused because how India treats its minorities in India, we have seen, and this is the fact, India butchers Muslims in its own nation. So what were the motives? Obviously, there wasn't to support the Afghan Muslims, as Afghanistan is a Muslim majority country. What were the motives India had when they stepped foot in Afghanistan?
See, India's motives are very clear. They enjoyed the protection of NATO and America. They were there and right under their nose, under their open eyes. They have been promoting terrorism from Afghan soil into Pakistan. They have been accommodating all the terrorist groups, and that was their main objective. But for that, they had to have a comfortable position within the Afghan society. They wanted to create that, and for that they pumped in the money, tried to buy the Afghan society and also prominent people and also the legislators. So this was their game, but it all happened because of the United States and NATO forces, because they were the ones who were promoting the Indian cause. They never tried to check Indian intentions. They never tried to put a check on the Indians to tell them that not you shouldn't do that. Whereas it was, I mean, as America had declared that it was a war against terror, but as far as Pakistan was concerned, it was a war to promote terror. This was being promoted, and I think the Afghan society, Afghan leadership has failed in a big way. They are not stupid people, but they were fooled. Why couldn't they see that Pakistan is sincere and Pakistan is making all efforts to bring them together on a table and then try to force some kind of unity amongst them? They sided, the Afghan leadership, they sided with India. And as you would recall, Amarullah Saleh and Abdullah Muhib, etc., what sort of language they have been using against Pakistan, what sort of narrative they have been promoting and floating against Pakistan. See, they are the criminals. They damaged our relationship with Afghanistan, and at the same time, they created this mess which they are facing today in Afghanistan because of their own personal vested interests.
Absolutely, absolutely. General retired Amjad Shoaib, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. As General retired Amjad Shoaib said, India has made a mess out of Afghanistan, and it seems that the claims that Ajit Doval, who is the current National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of India, was made, that were made by him were all false, and the world has seen how India has miserably failed. And one thing the world should remember, that you cannot underestimate Pakistan Army's abilities. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.